The Colleague UI transformation is ready for you. Get ready to modernize your entire colleague administrative experience. Upgrading your technology will give you the added benefit of replacing Silverlight with the more commonly used HTML5. This new user interface will give you a consistent look and feel across all Ellucian solutions. The best part is, this is all available without disrupting your institution. Your administrative users will adapt quickly and be familiar with the navigation within Colleague. Let's take a look at a pretty familiar form, NAE. Let's take a look at the form area first. The mnemonic is at the top of the form area. You'll notice the star next to the name. If you want to make the form a favorite, just click on the star. Next to the mnemonic are the standard Save, Save All, Cancel, and Cancel All buttons. Like in UI4, info-only fields are grayed out. Required fields are in red, with a dot in the upper left-hand corner. Windows are the shaded boxes. When you click on one, the window controller will pop up. The paging controls are there as before, as is the export to Excel. One new feature is that you can move the controller around the whole form, not just right above the window. Validation code pull-downs are the boxes with the down pointing arrow. As in UI4, clicking on the arrow brings up the validation code choices. There are two icons you already know, Detail and Calendar. There is also now a calculator icon, but as there is none on NAE, let's detail to FINF. This is what the submenu looks like in UI5. You'll see this icon is the calculator icon. You can enter the text manually. If the field needs calculation, you can pull up the calculator and enter the calculation. Back to NAE. Here is a new feature. Notice the country field? There is an ellipse, which is called a decorator. This tells you that this is a lookup field. On UI4, this was a tiny alert in the footer of the form. The decorator doesn't do the lookup, it lets you know that there is one for this field. If you hover over it, it'll tell you the lookup. The decorator will not show up if you have data in the field. For example, in the archived ethnic field. Let's move on to the context card. You'll notice if you hover over an icon, there will be a bit of help text. The first icon to the left of the context card is the push pin, which is how you keep the record, or records, in context when moving between forms. When the record is not to be held in context, the context card is not colored, as is the context card now. When the record is to be held in context, the pin and the context card, or cards, are colored. Note, in UI4, the push pin meant mapping, but in the time since UI4 was released, there is a new standard for mapping icons. The next icon is the question mark. This is for help within the context card. As you generally see in most browser applications, the question mark is for help throughout UI5. Finally, the last icon, the downward arrow, is used to view all records you have in context. On the right-hand side, the X is to cancel the record in context. Throughout UI5, the X will mean cancel. The star is for adding the record in context favorites, as it was in UI4. Throughout UI5, the star is used to add or access favorites. The final icon is for Maps, which is not yet enabled. You'll notice it resembles the mapping icon in Google Maps. The card itself is the same, with a couple differences. You can now copy text from the card. There is no more Launch Copy Window button. The Where Used shows the first 3 records. If there are more than 3, you'll see an ellipse, and if you hover over it, it shows them all. You'll also see in the email that there is an ellipse, as the email is longer than the space allocated in the context card. Should there be more than one record in the context cards, you move between the arrows indicated, which are grayed out here, as there is only one record in context. Now, at the area above the context card, there are 2 icons at the left, which are toggles for form search and person search. The search itself is the box to the right of the toggles. To do the search, just enter text and hit enter, or click on the magnifying glass. As you type, your search history will narrow down the characters you've entered. As you can see here in the form search, typing an N shows the forms I've accessed with an N in the mnemonic or description. The down arrow shows you your search history, person or form, depending on the toggle. The little backwards clock icon shows the results of your last search history. This was the search results function in UI4. Navigate is what navigation in UI4 was, but in UI5 you'll be able to see all the applications are available at the top level. For example, here is ST, and here is Core with the submenu showing. To the right of Navigate is the button you use for Logout. Moving down the left-hand side, you'll recognize the star as Favorites, inside of which are the favorites for person and forms. If you use favorites, here is what the pop-up menu for it will look like. The question mark is Help. These following options will be familiar from UI4. The person in the circle is the other place you can use to log out. The item that looks like a printer is how you print out the form. Finally, the form size slider is the sliding button with the plus and minus signs. In the upper right-hand column, there is a gear icon. In most applications, this is for settings and miscellaneous functions. Here are the items in this icon. In Preferences, you'll see color preferences, as well as other items that are preferences you can set. A note about colors. Your UI administrator can set a default color for each environment, but you can override this. Also on Preferences is where you can change the background shading for your UI forms. New on UI 5.3 are the custom field sequence options that were the Options menu in UI 4. The rest of the preferences are ones you would find in the Options menu in UI 4. Thanks very much for taking your UI 5 tour.